Keanu Reeves sat quietly in a cozy corner of Dawn's brew, his unassuming presence blending into the soft hum of the morning. Across the room, a young girl named Lily clutched her notebook, her eyes wide with shy admiration. But when a gang of roughneck bikers stormed in, their leader's sneer fixed on Keanu, everything changed. In a flash, hot coffee soaked Lily's uniform and ruined her treasured pages, an act of cruelty that ignited a firestorm no one saw coming. What happened next left the cafe speechless, and one life forever changed. Before we dive into this wild ride, drop a comment with where you're watching from. If you're hooked on gripping tales like this, hit that subscribe button. Tomorrow we've got another epic story waiting for you. The city was still half asleep when Keanu Reeves laced up his sneakers and stepped out for his morning run. It was his ritual, a steady rhythm of footsteps against pavement, a way to ground himself before the world demanded more. The streets stretched out quiet and modern, the kind of calm that only early hours could offer. A faint glow of dawn crept over the skyline, casting long shadows behind him. Keanu kept his pace even, his hoodie pulled up and cap low, blending into the stillness like any other runner. This was his time, before the cameras, the crowds, the noise, just him and the open road. He'd been running for years, a habit that stuck with him through the chaos of fame. It wasn't about speed or pushing limits, it was about control, about starting the day on his terms. Today felt no different, until he caught the faint scent of coffee drifting through the crisp air. It pulled him off his usual route toward a small cafe tucked at a street corner, Dawn's Brew. The name glowed in soft neon above the door, and through the glass he saw a warm light spilling out. He slowed to a walk, his breathing steady, and decided to step inside. A quiet cup of coffee sounded like the perfect way to cap off the morning. The door chimed as he entered, and the atmosphere hit him immediately. Soft jazz hummed low, the smell of fresh grounds mingling with baked goods. The place was sparse, just a handful of early risers scattered around. Near the window, a young couple, Sarah and Mike, sat close, their voices a murmur over steaming mugs. In the far corner, an older man, Tom, flipped through a newspaper, his glasses perched low on his nose. And by the counter, a girl, Lily, no older than 11, hunched over a notebook, her pencil scratching away at math problems. Her green school uniform was crisp, her books fanned out like she'd been at it for a while. Keanu gave the room a quick scan, then made for the counter. "Black coffee?" he said, voice low, keeping his cap tilted to avoid any fuss. The barista nodded, unfazed, and Keanu slipped to a table in the back. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. Routine stuff, nothing urgent. For a moment, he was just another guy in a cafe, not the Keanu Reeves everyone knew from the screen. That's how he liked it. The world could wait a little longer. Then he felt it. A prickling awareness, subtle, but there. He glanced up, casual, and caught Lily peeking at him from her seat. Her eyes darted back to her notebook fast, cheeks flushing pink. Keanu smirked to himself. He'd seen that look before, recognition mixed with nerves, the kind kids got when they weren't sure if they should say something. She fiddled with her pencil, stealing another glance, and he gave her a small nod, easy and reassuring. It seemed to settle her. She smiled faintly but stayed put, burying her nose back in her work. He leaned back, sipping his coffee, letting the warmth sink in. This was why he ran, why he sought out places like this, moments of quiet, where he didn't have to perform. Fame was a double-edged sword, and while he appreciated the love, he craved the ordinary too. Here no one bothered him. Sarah and Mike were lost in their own world. Tom was glued to his paper, and Lily, well, she was just a kid doing her homework. It was perfect, uneventful, exactly what he'd wanted. Minutes ticked by, the cafe's hum a steady backdrop. Lily shifted in her seat, her courage building. Finally, she stood, clutching her notebook like a shield, and edged toward him. Her steps were hesitant, her voice barely above a whisper when she spoke. "Excuse me, sir, are you Keanu Reeves?" He looked up, tilting his cap back just enough to meet her eyes. A faint grin tugged at his lips. "Me? Nah, just a guy who likes coffee. But if I were Keanu Reeves, I'd tell you to keep it under wraps, okay?" She giggled, nervous but thrilled, her face lighting up. "Okay," she whispered, nodding fast before scurrying back to her spot. Keanu chuckled softly, shaking his head. Fans like her, earnest, unjaded, were why he never minded the interruptions. It was sweet, harmless. She didn't stay away long. Soon, she was back, notebook in hand, her hands trembling slightly. "If you're not Keanu, that's fine," she said, hesitating. "But could I maybe get an autograph anyway?" He smiled at her guts, taking the notebook. "Sure thing." He flipped to a blank page, scribbled his signature with a quick note. "To Lily, the bravest kid I've met today," and handed it back. Her eyes went wide, pure joy breaking across her face. "Thank you," she squeaked, hugging the notebook tight. "Can we take a picture too? Please?" Keanu paused, then nodded. "Just one, but you've got to promise not to tell anyone, deal?" "Deal!" She beamed, fumbling for her phone. They snapped a quick shot, her grinning ear to ear, him with a subtle smirk. She thanked him again, practically bouncing as she returned to her seat, staring at the autograph like it was gold. Keanu took another sip of his coffee, amused. The morning was shaping up nicely. Quiet, simple, with a little brightness from Lily. He settled back, ready to soak in the peace a bit longer. But peace, it seemed, wasn't in the cards today. The soft jazz in Dawn's brew played on, a fragile thread of normalcy stitching the morning together. Keanu leaned back in his chair, coffee cup warm in his hand, watching Lily flip through her notebook with a grin that hadn't faded since their photo. The café felt like a sanctuary, small, unassuming, a pocket of calm in a world that rarely slowed down. He let his guard ease, just for a moment, savoring the rarity of it. Then the door slammed open with a jarring crash, shattering the peace-like glass. 5 men stormed in, their presence a tidal wave of aggression that drowned the room's quiet hum. Heavy boots thudded against the tiled floor, leather jackets creaking with every step. Tattoos snaked up their arms, skulls, flames, jagged lines, and their eyes swept the space with predatory intent. Leading them was Rex, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and a skull inked across his neck, its hollow eyes staring out like a warning. His grin was sharp, cruel, the kind that promised trouble wasn't just coming, it was already here. The air shifted instantly. Sarah and Mike froze mid-conversation, their hands pulling apart. Tom lowered his newspaper, peering over his glasses with a frown. Lily's pencil stopped moving, her small frame tensing as she glanced toward the door. Keanu didn't react, not yet. He set his coffee down slowly, his gaze lifting to the newcomers through the reflection in the window. He'd seen their type before, men who thrived on chaos, who wore their anger like armor. He stayed still, letting them make the first move. Rex's eyes locked onto him almost immediately, recognition sparking in their dark depths. He nudged the man beside him, a wiry guy with a scar slicing down his cheek, and muttered something low. Laughter erupted from the group, harsh and mocking, cutting through the café like a blade. Rex stepped forward, his boots deliberate, his voice loud enough to fill the room. "Well, well, look what we've got here. Keanu Reeves, the big Hollywood tough guy, slumming it with the peasants." Keanu met his stare, unflinching, his expression unreadable. "Just having coffee," he said, voice steady, low. "No trouble here?" "No trouble?" Rex sneered, closing the distance to Keanu's table. "That's rich coming from a guy who plays hero for a living. What's the matter, Reeves? No cameras around to make you look good?" The others fanned out behind him, forming a loose semicircle, their laughter a chorus of disdain. The wiry one cracked his knuckles, while a burly man with a thick beard smirked, leaning against a chair like he owned the place. Keanu's jaw tightened, but he didn't rise to the bait. He'd dealt with hecklers before, people who saw his face on a screen and thought they knew him, thought they could push him. He kept his hands loose on the table, his breathing even. "I'm not looking for a fight," he said, each word measured. "Let's keep this civil." "Civil?" Rex barked a laugh, leaning in close enough that Keanu could smell the stale tobacco on his breath. "You don't get it, do you? Guys like you, pretty boys with your fancy lives, you think you're better than us. I've seen it my whole life. Used to run security for your kind till one of you hotshots got me canned for nothing. Now, I'm going to show you what real tough looks like. The confession hung there, raw and jagged, a glimpse into Rex's grudge, not just against Keanu, but against a world he felt had wronged him. Keanu tilted his head slightly, processing it. There was history here, a wound festering beneath the bravado, but it didn't excuse what was coming. He stayed silent, his calm a stark contrast to Rex's simmering rage. Before he could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. "Leave him alone!" Lily stood up, her notebook clutched tight, her face flushed with defiance. She trembled, but her eyes burned with something fierce. "He's not hurting anyone. You're just mean!" The room held its breath. Rex turned slowly, his grin twisting into something uglier. "What's this? Little fangirl sticking up for her idol?" He stepped toward her, looming over her small frame. "That's cute, kid. Real cute." Lily didn't back down, though her hands shook. "You're just bullies," she said, voice quavering but firm. "Picking on people doesn't make you tough." Rex's eyes narrowed, his amusement curdling into spite. He snatched Keanu's coffee cup from the table, the liquid still steaming, and held it over Lily's books. "You want to play hero too, huh?" he said, voice dripping with malice. "Let's see how brave you are now." With a flick of his wrist, he tipped the cup. Hot coffee splashed across Lily's notebook, soaking the pages, dripping onto her uniform. She gasped, stepping back as the autograph Keanu had just signed blurred into a muddy smear. The café went dead silent, the weight of the act sinking in. Lily's eyes welled up, not from the heat, but from the ruin of something she treasured. Her fists clenched at her sides, her lip trembling. Rex tossed the empty cup aside, laughing. "Oops. Guess you should have kept your mouth shut, kid." Keanu's calm fractured. He stood slowly, his chair scraping the floor, his gaze locking onto Rex with an intensity that made the air feel heavier. "That's enough," he said, voice low but edged with steel, his hands flexed at his sides, not clenched, not yet, just ready. He'd wanted to avoid this, to keep the morning simple, but Rex had crossed a line. Lily's quiet courage, her ruined notebook, it wasn't just an insult, it was a spark. Rex turned back to him, smirking, oblivious to the shift. "What's the matter, Reeves? Mad about your little sidekick? Gonna cry about it?" He stepped closer, chest puffed out, daring Keanu to react. The others tightened their circle, their grins faltering just a touch as they sensed something change. Keanu didn't answer with words. His eyes flicked to Lily, then back to Rex, a silent promise forming. He'd tried peace. He'd tried reason. But some people only understood one language, and he was fluent in it. The storm was here, and he was done waiting it out. The air in Dawn's brew thickened, a storm cloud ready to burst. Keanu stood tall, his shadow stretching across the tiled floor, his gaze locked on Rex. The biker's smirk hung crooked, his chest heaving with arrogance, but beneath it something flickered. Uncertainty, maybe fear. He didn't see it yet, didn't feel the shift, but the others did. The wiry one with the scarred cheek stepped back half a pace, eyes darting. The burly one gripped the chair tighter. They sensed what Rex couldn't. Keanu wasn't just a man anymore, he was a force. Rex lunged first, his fist slicing through the air in a wild, reckless arc aimed at Keanu's jaw. Keanu moved like water, smooth, effortless, tilting his head just enough for the punch to whistle past. In the same breath, he snapped his elbow up, driving it into Rex's ribs. A sharp grunt escaped the biker's lips, his body folding slightly before Keanu followed with a precise jab to the jaw. Rex stumbled back, crashing into a table, cups clattering to the floor. The café erupted into chaos. The wiry one charged next, snarling, swinging a fist wrapped in a studded glove. Keanu sidestepped, the blow grazing his shoulder, and grabbed a metal tray from a nearby table. He swung it hard, the edge catching the biker's temple with a dull clang. The man reeled, dazed, and Keanu pressed forward, slamming the tray into his chest. The wiry biker hit the ground, gasping, the fight draining from him fast. The burly one roared, hefting a chair overhead like a club. He brought it down with brutal force, aiming to crush Keanu where he stood. Keanu ducked low, the chair smashing into the table behind him, splintering wood and sending shards flying. He surged up, closing the gap, and drove a knee into the man's gut. The biker doubled over, wheezing, and Keanu grabbed his arm, twisting it back until the chair slipped free. With a swift kick to the knee, he sent the man sprawling, the floor shaking under his weight. Two more closed in, a lanky one with a chain dangling from his belt, and a stocky one with fists like hammers. The lanky one swung the chain, its links hissing through the air toward Keanu's head. Keanu caught it mid-swing, wrapping it around his forearm, and yanked hard. The biker stumbled forward, off balance, and Keanu met him with a fist to the sternum, knocking the wind out of him. The stocky one barreled in, fists flying, but Keanu weaved through the onslaught, left, right, ducking low, then countered with a sharp uppercut. The man's head snapped back and he crumpled, out cold before he hit the ground. In the chaos, Lily moved. Her hands shook, but her eyes blazed with defiance. She grabbed an empty coffee mug from her table and hurled it at the wiry biker as he tried to stand. It struck his shoulder, ceramic shattering, and he cursed, whirling toward her. "You little—" he spat, lunging her way. Keanu intercepted, stepping between them, and drove a palm strike into the man's chest, sending him crashing back into the counter. Plates and cups toppled, a cascade of noise in the tight space. Rex recovered, blood trickling from his lip, his face a mask of fury. He shoved a table aside, wood screeching, and charged again. "You're dead, Reeves!" he bellowed, swinging a meaty fist. Keanu blocked it with his forearm, the impact jarring, then twisted Rex's arm down and slammed his elbow into the biker's nose. A sickening crunch sounded and Rex staggered, clutching his face. "This ain't over," he growled, voice thick with venom. "I'll burn your whole damn world down for this." Keanu stepped closer, his voice a quiet blade. "You picked the wrong fight, Rex. Walk away while you still can." His calm wasn't weakness, it was certainty, a warning etched in every line of his stance. Rex spat blood onto the floor, his eyes wild, but he didn't swing again, not yet. The café was a wreck. Tables overturned, glass littering the floor, the air thick with spilled coffee and tension. The bikers groaned, some clutching ribs, others barely moving. Keanu stood over them, breathing steady, his knuckles unbloodied but his presence towering. Lily watched, wide-eyed, her soaked notebook forgotten on the table. Sarah and Mike peeked from behind their booth. Tom's newspaper crumpled in his lap. No one spoke. The silence was heavier than the fight. Then sirens wailed in the distance, sharp and urgent, cutting through the haze. Rex's head jerked toward the sound, his bravado cracking. He glared at Keanu, hate burning in his stare. "You think this is done? I'll find you, Reeves. You and that brat. You're both marked." He stumbled to his feet, barking at his crew. "Move it!" The bikers scrambled, limping and cursing, but before they could reach the door, blue lights flashed outside. Cops burst in, guns drawn, shouting orders. "Hands up! Now!" The gang froze, out of options, and one by one they were cuffed. Rex threw Keanu a final venomous look as he was dragged out. "This isn't the end," he snarled. Keanu didn't flinch. He turned to Lily, crouching to her level. "You okay?" She nodded, shaky but resolute. "Yeah, that was... wow." He gave her a faint smile, then straightened as an officer approached, the café settling into an uneasy calm. But deep down, he knew Rex's words weren't empty. This was just the beginning. Keanu stepped out of Dawn's Brew into the brightening morning, the door chime fading behind him. The air hit him sharp and cool, a stark contrast to the chaos he'd just left. The street was waking up, cars humming in the distance, a few pedestrians shuffling by, but something felt off. His instincts, honed over years of navigating both real and staged dangers, prickled at the back of his neck. He pulled his cap lower, hands slipping into his pockets, and started walking. The cops had hauled Rex and his crew away, but their venom lingered in his mind. "This isn't the end," Rex had spat. Keanu knew men like that didn't let go easy. He kept his pace steady, blending into the flow of the city, but his senses stayed sharp. A shop window reflected two figures trailing him, too deliberate to be random. He caught the glint of a leather jacket, the faint rumble of engines idling nearby. His gut tightened. They hadn't wasted time. He turned into a narrow alley, brick walls rising on either side, the kind of place most avoided, It wasn't an escape, it was a trap, and he was walking right into it. Better here, away from bystanders, than out in the open. The rumble grew louder, and tires screeched as two motorcycles roared into the alley from the far end. Rex led the pack, his nose bandaged but his glare unbroken, flanked by the burly biker and the wiry one, both bruised but upright. The lanky one with the chain peeled off his bike, joining them on foot. They boxed him in. Engines snarling, boots stomping, a wall of menace closing fast. Keanu stopped, rolling his shoulders, his breath steady. "Didn't get enough back there?" he asked, voice calm but edged. Rex dismounted, a serrated knife flashing in his grip. "You humiliated me, Reeves," he growled, stepping closer. "Made me look weak in front of my boys. You think you can just walk away? I've been waiting for this. Years of getting spit on by your kind. Hollywood chewed me up, tossed me out like trash. Now it's my turn." Keanu's eyes narrowed, piecing it together. "So this is personal. You're not just mad at me. You're mad at all of it. The system, the rejection. But this doesn't fix that, Rex. You're digging a deeper hole." "Save your sermon," Rex snapped, twirling the knife. "I don't need your pity. I need you bleeding." He lunged, blades slashing toward Keanu's chest. Keanu twisted aside, the tip grazing his arm, slicing through fabric and drawing a thin line of blood. He gritted his teeth, the sting sharp but fleeting. The burly one charged next, swinging a crowbar in a wide arc. Keanu ducked, grabbing a trash can lid from the ground, and deflected the blow with a metallic clang. He shoved forward, slamming the lid into the biker's chest, then kicked his knee out. The man crumpled, howling. The wiry one whipped a chain through the air, its links whistling toward Keanu's head. Keanu caught it mid-swing, yanking hard, pulling the biker off balance. He drove a fist into the man's ribs, then a knee to his gut, sending him sprawling. The lanky one revved his bike and sped forward, aiming to ram Keanu with raw horsepower. Keanu sidestepped at the last second, grabbing a loose pipe from the alley floor. He swung low, jamming it into the front wheel. The bike flipped, hurling the rider over the handlebars. He hit the pavement with a sickening thud, groaning. Rex circled back, fury twisting his face. "You're nothing without your stunts," he roared, slashing again. Keanu blocked with his forearm, the blade nicking his skin, and grabbed Rex's wrist, twisting until the knife clattered free. Rex headbutted him, splitting Keanu's lip. Blood trickled down his chin, but he didn't flinch. He retaliated with a brutal elbow to Rex's temple, staggering him. "Last chance," Keanu said, wiping his mouth. "Walk away." Rex laughed, ragged and unhinged. "Not till you're done." He dove for the knife, but Keanu was faster, kicking it out of reach and tackling him into the wall. A flurry of punches followed. Rex's wild swings met with Keanu's precise counters. A final uppercut snapped Rex's head back, and he slumped, dazed, but still spitting curses. The alley fell silent, save for the biker's groans and the distant hum of the city. Keanu straightened, breathing hard, his arm and lip stinging. Blood stained his sleeve, but he'd turned the tide. Again. The pipe clinked as he dropped it, his gaze sweeping the wreckage. Bikes tipped over, bodies strewn across the concrete. He'd wanted to avoid this, to reason with Rex, but some wounds ran too deep for words. Then sirens wailed, closer now, and blue lights flashed at the alley's mouth. Cops spilled out, guns drawn, shouting, "Freeze! Hands up!" Keanu raised his arms slowly, blood dripping, his calm unshaken. The lead officer, a grizzled man with sharp eyes, took in the scene. 4 bikers down, Keanu standing amidst the chaos. "What the hell happened here?" he barked, advancing. "Self-defense," Keanu said, voice even. "They came after me." The officer's gaze hardened, flicking to the blood on Keanu's arm. "Looks like you're the one causing trouble. You're coming with us." 2 cops grabbed his arms, cuffing him rougher than necessary. Keanu didn't resist, but his mind raced. The bikers stirred, Rex glaring through swollen eyes, a smirk creeping back. "Told you I'd make you pay," he rasped as they hauled him up. The crowd at the alley's edge grew, phones out, whispers spreading. Keanu's jaw tightened as they shoved him toward the squad car. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Rex's grudge had twisted this into something uglier, and now the law was blind to who'd struck first. For the first time that morning, Keanu felt the weight of being cornered. not by fists, but by misunderstanding. The police station hummed with the low buzz of bureaucracy, phones ringing, officers shuffling papers, the faint clink of cuffs. Keanu sat in a holding room, his hands uncuffed now, but his wrists still raw from the metal. Blood crusted on his lip, his sleeve torn where Rex's knife had grazed him. He leaned back against the cold wall, eyes half closed, his calm unshaken despite the mess. The lead officer, Detective Hargrove, had grilled him for an hour, skepticism etched into every question. 4 guys down, and you're the only one standing? Doesn't add up, Reeves. Keanu's answer stayed simple. They came for me, I defended myself. But the footage was missing, the truth buried under suspicion. Outside, the day dragged on, the sun climbing higher. Keanu's mind replayed the alley, Rex's rage, the sting of the blade, the weight of being misjudged. He'd fought to protect, not to destroy, but the law saw only the aftermath. Then the door creaked open, and Hargrove stepped in, his expression shifting, less hostile, more uncertain. "You've got visitors," he said, stepping aside. Lily burst through first, her green uniform still stained, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Behind her came Tom, Sarah, and Mike, their faces a mix of resolve and nerves. "We've got proof," Lily said, voice steady despite her small frame. She thrust her phone at Hargrove, a shaky video already playing. The screen showed Dawn's brew, the bikers storming in, Rex spilling the coffee, Keanu's measured response exploding into action. Tom's gravelly voice chimed in, "I saw it all, they started it. He saved that girl." Sarah nodded, clutching Mike's arm. "We recorded the alley too, caught them jumping him. He didn't have a choice." Hargrove watched, jaw tightening as the evidence piled up, undeniable. Keanu met Lily's eyes, a faint smile tugging at his split lip. "You didn't have to do this," he said softly. She squared her shoulders. "Yeah, I did. You stood up for me." "Someone had to stand up for you," Hargrove exhaled, handing the phone back. "This changes things. You're free to go, Reeves, but stay out of trouble." Keanu nodded, rising, the weight lifting almost. He stepped outside the station as dusk settled, the sky streaking orange and gold. The air felt lighter, but his instincts prickled again. A shadow moved near the parking lot, a man in a dark jacket, too still, too focused. Keanu's pace slowed, his senses sharpening. Rex's words echoed, "I'll make you pay!" Then tires squealed, and a motorcycle roared from the lot's edge. Rex, battered but unbroken, his eyes wild. Behind him, the stranger drew a silenced pistol, aiming straight for Keanu's back. A hired gun. Rex hadn't quit. He'd escalate. Keanu spun just as a shout rang out, Hargrove, gun drawn, charging from the station. "Drop it!" The hitman froze, caught, and the pistol clattered to the asphalt. Rex skidded to a stop, his plan unraveling, his face twisting with fury. Keanu stepped forward, hands loose, voice low but piercing. "This ends now, Rex. You've lost. Everything. The fight, your crew, your revenge. Look at yourself. Is this who you wanted to be?" Rex gripped the handlebars, knuckles white, his breath ragged. "You don't get it," he snarled. "You took everything from me. My pride, my life." Keanu shook his head, stepping closer, unguarded. "No. You gave that up a long time ago. Hollywood didn't break you. You did. Blaming me won't fix it. Let it go, or you'll lose what's left." The words hit harder than any punch. Rex's glare faltered, his shoulders slumping as the truth sank in, raw, unfiltered. His hands slipped from the bike and he sank to his knees, defeated not by force, but by his own reflection. Hargrove and his team swarmed in, cuffing him, the hitman already in custody. Rex didn't resist, his fire snuffed out. Keanu turned away, spotting Lily near the station steps, her eyes wide with awe. He reached into his jacket, pulling out a fresh notebook, simple blue, unmarred. He scribbled inside, then handed it to her. "For the bravest person I know," he said. She opened it, reading aloud. To Lily, "Courage isn't fighting, it's standing up. You're the real hero today. Keanu." Her face lit up, tears brimming. "Thanks, Keanu," she whispered. He smiled, tipping his cap. "Call me Keanu." He walked off into the fading light, the city's rhythm swallowing him whole. Justice had won, not with fists, but with truth, with choices. Lily's courage, Rex's surrender, it was more than a victory, it was a lesson. As he disappeared into the sunset, a courier approached, slipping him an envelope. He opened it later, alone, a single line in jagged script. Rex was just the start. His jaw tightened. Someone bigger loomed in the shadows, but for now, the streets were safe. He tucked the note away, ready for whatever came next. What started as a quiet morning spiraled into a storm of courage, justice, and redemption. Keanu Reeves didn't just fight bikers. He showed us that strength isn't only in fists, but in standing firm when it counts. Lily taught us that bravery isn't size or power, it's a voice raised against wrong, no matter how small. Even Rex's fall whispers a truth. Revenge consumes, but letting go rebuilds. This story isn't just action, it's a mirror. We all face moments where the easy path tempts, yet the right one demands more. Will you rise like Keanu, defend like Lily, or learn like Rex? That's the power of a single day, a single choice. If this tale lit a spark in you, hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels more epic stories. Tomorrow's adventure is waiting and we're just getting started. Let's keep the fire burning.